How good was Dan Marino? That's the question that divides people when they debate greatness. Greatness gets measured one way historically: rings, Super Bowl championships. You win them, you're great. You don't, you're not. It's binary and it's brutal. But Dan Marino breaks that formula entirely. He's the anomaly in the entire league. The quarterback whose arm was so special that even the greatest quarterbacks who ever lived still bring him up constantly. Not as a rival, not as someone with a good career, as the gold standard, the measuring stick, the ghost they spent their entire careers chasing. The best of the best about Marino, they don't talk about what he didn't win. They talk about his arm, his release, the way he threw the football in ways that shouldn't have been physically possible. These are Hall of Famers. These are Super Bowl champions. These are people who understand quarterbacks better than anyone on earth. So what did Manning, Walsh, Montana, Elway, Favre, and Kelly see in Marino? Number 7 was Brett Favre. Favre spent his career chasing one ghost: Marino's touchdown record. For 13 years, Marino's 420 touchdowns stood unbreakable. When Favre approached that record in 2007, it wasn't triumph. Favre described his pursuit as chasing a ghost. Real respect from one gunslinger to another. When Favre broke the record, he didn't celebrate like a conqueror. It feels great, but I've never considered myself as good a quarterback as Dan Marino. Dan was a hero of mine. That was real recognition. Favre understood what every quarterback knew. He had volume stats. But Marino had something different: speed. Mechanics that made the game look easier. Marino sent Favre a message. Marino wasn't threatened. He felt respected. Marino said, "I loved holding the record for 13 years, but if someone was going to break it, I'm glad it was you." Favre saw himself as Marino's spiritual successor. Same style, same approach. But Favre knew Marino was the prototype. Number 6 was John Elway. Elway and Marino arrived together in 1983, but they played opposite styles. Elway was the scrambler. Marino stayed in the pocket. Elway marveled at this. He said Marino played from the pocket better than anyone ever. Not because he moved better, but because his release was so quick he didn't need to leave. His arm neutralized the pass rush. Instead of running, Marino threw so fast that pass rushers couldn't reach him. That's why when Elway built the perfect quarterback, he takes his own arm. But he takes Dan Marino's release. Elway admitted his delivery was superior. That's from a 2-time Super Bowl winner. In 1998, they faced one last time on Monday night. Marino threw for 355 yards and 4 touchdowns. After the game, Elway praised Marino. He said, "Dan was great tonight. He did everything." That showed respect. Elway acknowledged what Marino could do. Even declining Marino's mechanics kept him dangerous. Before they became famous, there was draft day divergence. Elway went first overall. Marino fell to the end of the first round. But Marino had the faster start. He broke records immediately. Elway said Marino was ready from day one, like a polished diamond. Number 5 was Joe Montana. Montana had 4 Super Bowl rings. Montana seemed untouchable for decades. But in retirement, Montana said Dan Marino was the best quarterback in NFL history. Not second, not close. The absolute best. That's huge from the man with championships. But Montana understood something crucial. He understood the era. He understood how difficult it was to achieve what Marino did in 1984. Montana said, "Put Marino into today's game where he gets free release and his receivers, holy cow, weren't very big. Now these guys are 6'4", 6'5". Montana was saying if Marino had the same advantages, Marino would exceed him. Montana played with Jerry Rice. Montana played under Bill Walsh. Montana had receivers who could separate and protection under modern rules. Marino played in a different world. Montana explains the physical difference. He said he had a quick release. I had to step into throws to get force. He had the perfect torque and strength to deliver the ball quickly with accuracy. Montana relied on footwork. But watching Marino, he sees something he never possessed: pure physics, force generation without the lower body. That admission means everything. Montana explores the what-if scenario. If Marino had played with Jerry Rice and had Bill Walsh, how many rings would he have? Montana suggests Marino might have matched or exceeded his total. Number 4 was Bill Walsh. Walsh created the West Coast offense. Walsh coached the San Francisco dynasty. Walsh had a completely different philosophy from Marino. Walsh valued timing and rhythm. Marino attacked downfield, vertical, aggressive, complete opposites. But Walsh looked at Marino with pure awe. Walsh called Marino the best quarterback he ever saw. Walsh explained why. Marino could throw the ball in ways that were impossible. Walsh said Marino made throws that were theoretically impossible against certain coverages. Walsh understood defensive geometry, but Marino made throws into windows that mathematically didn't exist. The ball arrived faster than defenders could react. The window closed in a fraction of a second, yet Marino's release fitted in. Walsh had to rethink how defenses should work. Standard rules didn't apply. A cornerback might think he had time to break on the ball, but it would arrive before his foot could plant. Walsh said Marino is throwing the ball in an amazing fashion. He's got the quick, strong arm, and he doesn't have to get his feet right. He can just whip the ball to anyone. That was public admiration. But before Super Bowl 19, Walsh used Marino as psychological weapon. He told his team they were too scared. He berated them for fearing Marino. That shows how much of a threat Walsh viewed Marino. The dynasty felt they needed extra motivation just to face a second-year player. Number 3 was Peyton Manning. Manning is known as the thinking quarterback, but Manning's idol wasn't about the mental game. Manning says Dan is the best pure passer he has ever seen. Pure passer means one thing exactly. Drop back, read defense, deliver strikes from the pocket. That's the art form. And according to Manning, nobody did it better. Manning's connection to Marino is personal. When Archie Manning retired in 1984, Peyton was 8 years old. That same year, Marino exploded and shattered every record. Manning watched it as a child, and it shaped his view of the position. Manning told Marino directly, "I've always said you've got to have a favorite player, and after my dad retired, you became mine." Manning idolized Marino. Manning would go on to break some records. But Manning didn't view Marino as a rival. Manning viewed him as the blueprint for how the position should be played. Manning created his own thought experiment about the perfect quarterback. He said he would take John Elway's arm, Dan Marino's release, Troy Aikman's dropback, Brett Favre's scrambling, and Joe Montana's 2-minute poise. By selecting Marino for the release, Manning was saying Marino's mechanism was superior. Better than Elway, better than his own. Number 2 was Jim Kelly. Kelly was from the same era. He played against Marino in the AFC East. He got hit hard every Sunday. He dealt with the same violence. Kelly was tough. He won Super Bowls. He was a champion. But when Kelly talks about Marino's arm, there's pure awe. Kelly says, Dan Marino had the best arm talent I have ever seen. Nobody could spin it like Dan. Nobody. The emphasis matters. The word spin is important. In quarterback language, spinning the ball means generating high RPM. That matters because a ball with high spin cuts through wind better. It holds its spiral tighter. It's harder for defenses to defend. Kelly understood the violence of the era. He describes it like this: taking a sprint from 20 feet away and hitting you as hard as I can, and you have to do that 15 more times. That's what the game was. You got demolished constantly. And Marino would do it fearlessly because his arm was faster. Number 1 was Tom Brady. Brady won 7 Super Bowls. Brady has more wins than any quarterback in NFL history. Brady has championship pedigree that nobody else touches. Brady's game was built on accuracy and precision and mental processing. But when Brady is asked to name the greatest arms in NFL history, his answer is simple and direct. Dan Marino. Brady distinguishes between different types of arm talent. There are great arms. Brady mentions Jeff George, Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, Josh Allen. Those are great. Then there's the elite tier. Brady says there are only 2 in that elite category. Dan Marino and Aaron Rodgers. That's it. Only 2 names in that conversation. Brady is saying Marino operates on a completely different level. Brady points to Marino's lightning-fast release as the key factor. That's what separates him from everyone else. Brady says all-time arm talent, Dan Marino. Brady goes even further. He says Marino is possibly the greatest arm of all time. And among elite quarterbacks, this fact is not disputable. Think about that statement. The guy with 7 rings, the guy who won most, the guy with the best resume is saying Marino's arm is possibly the greatest ever. It's not even a debate among people who truly understand the position at the highest level. So what did Brady, Manning, Montana, Elway, Favre, Kelly, and Walsh see when they evaluated Marino? They saw pure mechanics. Just one thing, really, the release itself. The ball left Marino's hand so fast it defied what should even be physically possible. Myth says 0.25 seconds. That's what legend and folklore claims. But modern frame-by-frame analysis shows something different from the myth. Marino's release was timed at 0.31 to 0.327 seconds consistently. Aaron Rodgers measures at 0.31 to 0.307 seconds. Marino and Rodgers are basically identical in release speed. A standard quarterback like Jared Goff throws around 0.35 seconds. That difference doesn't sound huge at all. But in the NFL, 0.31 versus 0.35 is the difference between completion and sack every single time. Marino operated at a speed imperceptible to the human eye, but mathematically distinct from every peer. He matched Aaron Rodgers perfectly in speed. How did Marino achieve this incredible speed and release time? His father taught him a technique called up and out, with absolutely no wasted motion at all. First, Marino held the ball high, right near his chest and ear. This eliminated the windup that most quarterbacks use. Most quarterbacks bring the ball up from waist. It takes time and creates rhythm. Marino started already high. Second, Marino relied on torque over step. He didn't need to step into throws to generate velocity consistently. He used hip rotation and extraordinary wrist strength. Joe Montana noted this specifically. Montana said he had to step to get force. Marino didn't need that. His upper body did everything. Third came the violent wrist snap. When Marino released, his wrist snapped violently, imparting high RPM on the football. The ball spun tight and fast through the air. There's a famous story about this. John Elway asked Marino how he maintained grip in bad weather conditions. Marino told him he sometimes put tacks in his gloves for grip enhancement. He was so focused on grip strength that he'd actually put tacks in gloves. His hand control mattered tremendously. The wrist snap was absolutely everything to his technique. And here's proof the mechanics worked perfectly and consistently. In 1988, Marino threw 606 pass attempts. He got sacked only 6 times all season. That's a sack percentage of 0.99%. Think about how insane that really is. In modern football, a sack percentage under 4% is considered elite level. Most pocket passers like Brady or Manning would take 20 to 30 sacks on that volume of attempts. The Dolphins' offensive line wasn't filled with Hall of Famers. None made the Pro Bowl that year, so this wasn't about protection from the line. This was purely about the release itself. Marino identified blitzers instantly, processed coverage quickly, and physically released before defenders could arrive. He didn't run away from pressure, he threw directly through pressure. His mechanics allowed him to neutralize pass rushes without any mobility whatsoever. That's exactly what Elway meant. Marino played from the pocket better than anyone in history. All this happened in a completely different era of football. In 1984, Marino threw 5,084 yards and 48 touchdowns with a passer rating of 108.9. Those numbers seemed unbreakable forever in NFL history. They stood for 20 years before being broken. Not until 2004 when Peyton Manning threw 49 touchdowns and 2011 when Drew Brees threw 5,476 yards. But the game had changed significantly. Rules had changed dramatically. Environment was completely different from that era. Defensive backs could hit receivers much more aggressively than today. The Mel Blount rule opened things up in 1978. But defenders could grab receivers downfield way more than in modern football. Quarterbacks had less protection from the league. Hits that are illegal now were legal then. Low hits, hits to the helmet, driving the quarterback into the ground. All legal, all common. Marino's receivers were smaller than modern receivers. Mark Clayton was 5'9". Mark Duper was also smaller. Today's receivers are giants, 6'4", 6'5". Joe Montana pointed out this difference. Montana said if Marino played today with bigger receivers and rule protection, holy cow, what would he do? Marino was playing a modern game in an old world. That's why legends use specific language when evaluating him. They say arm talent. They say pure passer. They're acknowledging production wasn't about system or gimmicks. It was raw, overwhelming ability in a harder era. And that's the thing about Dan Marino. He's not the guy with most Super Bowls. He's not the guy with most playoff wins. He's the guy that every greatest quarterback points to when asked about pure arm talent. He's the quarterback's quarterback, the gold standard, the ghost. Every time Brady talks about arms, he points directly to Marino. Every time Manning explains a pure passer, he says Marino's name. Every time a legend gets asked about best mechanics, they name Marino. He's the measuring stick. He's the level these guys aspire to. Not because of rings, not because of championships, but because his arm and release represented something perfect, something complete, something that even now guys like Patrick Mahomes are chasing in pure talent. That's the Marino legacy. Not what he could have been, but what he was. A singular force who mastered throwing a football better than anyone in history. The gold standard. The ghost. If this video showed you something new about one of the greatest arms ever, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into football history. Leave a comment telling us which quarterback's take resonated most.